In this week's drive, we see South Africa get back on track, catch up with an Arab with Formula One dreams, look at two very different solutions to vehicle pollution, and get very physical on the track and off it. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with the real heart of Formula One racing, the engine. Stand still to 100 in 2.5 seconds with a top speed of nearly 350 kilometers an hour. Racing car engines have changed a lot over the years, with drivers having the most awesome acceleration in the so-called turbo era back in the late 1980s. Williams won the title in 1987 when Nelson Piquet had the fastest car and the most powerful engine.
The top performance of this car was about 1,200 horsepower from a 1.5-litre turbocharged engine. That was a bit too much, and it was time to draw the line. So in 1988, this car had a 3.5-litre naturally aspirated engine, producing only 650 horsepower.
Now the output has grown again, too much so, say the FIA, and they're discussing a 2.4-litre V8 engine design. But for now, the 3-litre V10 remains, delivering over 900 horsepower. There are about 5,000 individual parts inside. Let's have a look at some of them. The cylinders are arranged in two banks of 5 at 90 degrees. So far, the best compromise for engine size, weight, power output and balance. The crankshaft spins at up to 19,000 revolutions per minute, and two pumps constantly supply oil, even in fast corners. The camshafts spin at 9,500 RPM to open the ultralight valves, which are closed by compressed air. Normal valves and conventional steel springs could never sustain these speeds. Lightweight is critical in all parts. The pistons have only 2 rings, are flat and light, but tough enough to withstand hundreds of ignition sparks per second. The valves are driven by gears for extremely precise timing. The handmade exhaust can withstand temperatures of up to 800 degrees during the race. Total engine weight is under 100 kilograms, and only powerful engines give you a chance to win.
As a driver, you just drive out and the engine feels powerful enough, the revs are high enough, you notice the difference compared to the previous year's engine the first time you drive the car, but a driver can't really judge the engine properly. That's what test benches are for.
About 400 kilometers at racing speeds are simulated on the test bench as technicians test every single component, to destruction if need be, to try and make sure that nothing will fail during a race. 200 Formula One engines leave the BMW factory every year, just for the Williams team. Every engine block is carefully planned and created as a negative mold, which is assembled with extreme care. Then the engine is cast with a special aluminium alloy formulated for maximum strength and lightness. Building an engine takes around 80 hours of concentrated work by skilled technicians. The results must last a full race weekend. This is a road car cylinder head. You don't think we'd be able to show you inside a top-secret Formula One engine, did you? Passenger car engines should reach about 250,000 kilometers or more. Improvements in both fuel consumption and emissions have been made over the years.
This has been made possible by all sorts of work, but in particular by optimizing the combustion process. This has been done partly by improving ignition. In other words, the engine's control system can now set ignition times to the optimum. It's also been improved by producing a better mixture as the fuel is injected.
However, the best performance comes in Formula One. Each of the races is about 300 kilometers long, and in covering this distance, about 8 million controlled explosions will take place behind each driver's shoulders. No wonder it takes a special type of human to stay in control. Next year, Williams will have 2 new drivers. One is rising Australian star Mark Webber, but the other driver is still to be announced. Jenson Button was announced as a signing, but the contract with BAR was upheld and he'll stay there. Jacques Villeneuve spent his first day of work at the Sauber team doing a seat fitting for the new car at the team's headquarters at Hinwil near Zurich. Seats are made with the driver sitting in a bag of chemical foam which solidifies, taking his body shape. Villeneuve, the 1997 world champion, has signed a 2-year contract with the Swiss team and will be testing for Sauber for the first time in Barcelona.
It's always been a very respected team so since I started racing, and there's never anything political. Everything seems to be clean and kept in-house, and that's something I wanted. And there's a lot of respect even inside the team, so it looks like it will be easy to work. All through last season, the Sauber Petronas team has made huge improvements, and hopefully that will carry on into next year.
At first glance, the appointment of Jacques Villeneuve as the replacement driver for Giancarlo Fisichella, who's moved to Renault for the 2005 season, seemed a gamble to many in Formula One. Here was a driver whose career had been largely unfulfilled since the heady days of 1997, when he won the Formula One driver's title with Williams. However, Peter Sauber chose the Canadian over driving talents such as David Coulthard and Nick Heidfeld, as he thought that Villeneuve would be the most positive recruitment, and maybe that's no surprise. Sauber finished a commendable 6th in the Constructors' Championship this season, with Fisichella and Brazilian Felipe Massa behind the wheel, and Villeneuve was impressed. After leaving Williams, Villeneuve's stint at BAR was an unhappy one, and the feeling within the sport remains that the 33-year-old needs to be in an environment where his talents are appreciated. His father, Gilles, was the first Canadian to win a Formula One race. Uncle Jacques was the first Canadian to win an IndyCar race. But this Jacques Villeneuve is one of just 3 people to win the IndyCar Championship, Jacques was the youngest, the Indy 500 and the F1 World title.
It's very important, because if you're not sitting in the car and properly and you're not held well, you can't feel the car, you can't feel the changes, and physically, within 5 laps you have cramps everywhere. So it's very important to get a good seat.
Villeneuve made his comeback with Renault in the last 3 races of this season after a year on the sidelines following his sudden, acrimonious departure from BAR. His position was taken on by junior driver Jenson Button, who scored a string of 2nd and 3rd places this year to help BAR to a highest ever 2nd place in the Constructors' title.
Well, it feels like a second start. Because of 1 year off, it does feel like a second start, and it's great to have this opportunity. You know, a lot has been accomplished in the past, but it needs to be accomplished again. Right now, it's the key thing is to keep improving with the team and the car.
The half-Swiss, half-Canadian former world champion feels that the driver-constructor relationship needs to be a symbiotic one, and believes that he has found that with Peter Sauber in Switzerland. At BAR, he didn't have the machinery to shine, and increasing conflict with the new team principal Dave Richards robbed him of the will to win. However, he is now firmly back on the F1 grid, and with Sauber's relationship with Ferrari and their engines continuing in 2005, Villeneuve is hoping that he will be back on that winner's podium sooner rather than later.
Das wird schön verzittert, he?
Last week, we covered the announcement of the South African entry in the A1 Grand Prix World Series, and now the car has had its first public airing at the Kyalami racetrack on the outskirts of Johannesburg, as the track hosted the final round of the Power Tour motorbike series. Thousands of racing enthusiasts were at the event, and they also witnessed the launch of the country's A1 entry. Sheikh Maktoum Hasha Maktoum Al Maktoum is the founder of the new series, which will be staged during Formula One's winter break starting next September. A nephew of the Crown Prince of Dubai, Sheikh Maktoum looked on as driver Alan van der Merwe, a former British Formula 3 champion, took South Africa's car onto the Kyalami circuit. It was the first time that an A1 car had been run in public anywhere, and it marked the end of a successful week for the organisers. At the launch, President Thabo Mbeki tried the car for size and then offered his full support for the series, which was the perfect response for Sheikh Maktoum.
I mean, he gave a beautiful speech. He came afterwards and gave me a hug and said, "Thank you. Make this happen. The government's behind you, and we'll will support you as much as we can.
President Mbeki isn't the only VIP backer. His predecessor, Nelson Mandela, is also a keen racing fan.
Nelson Mandela was very excited, very happy. He said, thank you for bringing this. I said, thank you for seeing me and backing A1 up. It's absolutely phenomenal.
The concept behind A1 is that competing teams, their sponsors and drivers would all come from the same country. The full calendar for the inaugural season will be announced in the next few weeks and is expected to feature 10 to 14 races at venues on all 6 continents. Current plans suggest that 25 cars could take place in A1 races, 5 more than the 20 that compete in Formula 1 Grand Prix. As Van der Merwe drove the 550 horsepower A1 car around Kyalami, those in attendance received their first taste of what the new series has to offer. There's never been a Formula 1 driver from an Arabic country, but Mehdi Benani may soon change all that. Mehdi is the first and most talented of a new breed of Arabic-speaking racers coming through the ranks. With an explosion in motorsport interest surrounding the Bahrain Grand Prix, we can expect an influx of Arabic drivers in the future. If the saying that drivers are born and not made is true, then things should go well for Benani.
Make yourself familiar with all of the martial.
It's been a dream, of course, to have the help of my father and mother, with both of them in the same field. At home, we only talk of racing. We only watch races on television. So this allows me to always be in touch with what's happening in racing.
The young Moroccan's father was a 4-time national motocross champion, while his mother is a racing legend in Morocco, a unique woman in the Arab world as a racing champion on closed circuits. She even has her own website. Not surprisingly, his parents have had a huge influence on his career, and so have some other influential contacts.
Before I got to the international circuit, I had to win races in Morocco, and afterwards, with the help of His Majesty the King, I managed to reach the international level and become a member of the FFSA through Le Mans.
This year, the 20-year-old moved into the Formula BMW Asia-Pacific Series with Team Meritus, and he showed his potential by finishing 3rd in the championship and winning the Rookie Cup. All this is part of a long-term plan to become the first Arabic driver in Formula 1, and already his performances have been noticed by a number of teams.
We have had some contacts with Jordan and Minardi, so they are following me closely, and God willing, I'll drive for them in Formula 1. But there are other teams that could be interested, such as BMW Williams. We're trying to make a choice, but first of all, I need to get more experience. To get into Formula 1, I have to learn how to win races. I don't want to get to Formula 1 without a strong background.
Ne pas avoir trop de base pour avoir la tête.
As a mother, first of all, I'm very proud of him. I couldn't give birth to an engineer or a doctor. He could only be a racing driver. I was, and still am, a racing driver. So he had this passion from a tender age. I'm proud of his competence and I believe in him. You're going to ask me if I worry about him? I did worry, but with the help of God, everything is going to be all right. But then, he is very good, seriously good.
Next year, the pair will make history by entering the 2005 Paris-Dakar Rally, the first mother and son partnership to take part in the marathon desert race.
My ambition is to raise the Moroccan flag high on the podium of Formula 1 World Championship, and my dream is to hear the Moroccan national anthem at the Monaco Grand Prix.
With the support of King and Country, he could well be Morocco's next sporting hero. There was a huge crowd at Phoenix for the 34th of 36 races on the NASCAR calendar. On the 105th lap, Matt Kenseth brought out the caution flags when his left rear tyre went flat. The tyre shredded and left debris on the track, and light rain began to fall, so the race was stopped for 20 minutes. Americans don't race on wet tracks. A caution came out again on lap 128 with a crash involving Jamie McMurray, Ryan Newman, Mark Martin, Joe Nemechek and Kevin Harvick, among others. Points leader Kurt Busch had to stop for tyres, having flat spotted them, avoiding the crash. On lap 225, race leader Bush pitted again and his car was reluctant to restart. Terry Labonte lost control of his car and crashed into the inside wall. Luckily, all the other drivers managed to avoid crashing into him. On lap 282, the yellow flag waved again, the 9th time, for oil on the track from Matt Kenseth. With light rain making it worse, Jamie McMurray spun and hit the wall, but again, no other cars were involved. With 6 laps left, Casey Mears' left rear tyre blew and he hit the outside wall. The race was red flagged and halted again due to debris left on the track. The race would restart in single file and it began to rain again. With 24 cars on the same lap, the race was run under yellow for 3 laps. When the green came out, Dale Earnhardt swung inside Jeff Gordon's car and shot into the lead for the 2-lap run to the flag. Ryan Newman, who struggled for most of the day after starting from pole, came home to take 2nd place from Gordon. The victory was Earnhardt's 6th of the season, 15th of his career, and 2nd in a row at Phoenix. He bounced back from 2 consecutive 33rd place finishes to move into 3rd in the championship, 47 points behind leader Bush.
For the 2nd straight year here in Phoenix.
Growing pollution levels and rising oil prices are just 2 of the problems facing motorists. But a Filipino inventor may have come up with a solution, developing a device that is environmentally friendly and cost-effective. Pablo Planas claims his invention, the Kaos Super Turbocharger, maintains the optimum air-fuel ratio. A vehicle's carburetor mixes fuel and air when the throttle is open, but when the engine's idling, there's not really enough air going into the engine as the throttle is nearly closed.
When you release the accelerator and the throttle closes, the engine cannot take air into the carburetor, the part of the engine that should be supplying air. This device allows the right amount of air into the engine, so even when it's idling, the mixture of gasoline and air is correct. Step on the accelerator and the mixture is also correct. If the mixture is always correct, there will be no unburnt fuel, no pollution. That's called complete combustion.
At the Manila office for Kaos, mechanics are kept busy installing the device. Motorists who use it say it's excellent value for money.
For the installation of the gadget, I normally consume 7 kilometers per liter. After installation, now I consume 10 kilometers per liter. So almost 30% is my savings. As far as the performance of the vehicle is concerned, it's very smooth. The engine performance is very much excellent now than before. And another thing is it is zero pollution.
Despite coming up with the idea in 1973, Planas only started to sell the gadget last year. He said he wanted to make sure his theories were correct before launching the product. The KTSC has passed tests conducted by the Philippines Department of Energy and the Automotive Research and Training Center of Taiwan. And last year, Philippines President Gloria Arroyo awarded Planas the Presidential Award Medal for his invention. Since its launch onto the local market a year ago, Planas has sold 3,500, but will wait for an international patent before launching his product onto the world market. California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger drove up in a hydrogen-fueled Hummer H2H to a brand new fueling station that he hopes will soon be fueling more than just this vehicle. His goal? A zero-emissions hydrogen highway by the end of the decade.
We will not just dream about the hydrogen highway. We will not just dream about the hydrogen fueling stations. We will not just dream about the hydrogen cars. We will build it.
The governor and many others believe that hydrogen-powered vehicles, which are zero emissions and whose fuel sources are abundant, are the future of personal transport. General Motors, who created the Hummer H2H to learn more about hydrogen as a fuel, has been a strong proponent of moving the world away from its dependence on oil and pushing for a new hydrogen-based economy.
We believe the ultimate solution is hydrogen, but that's a fuel that there's no experience in. How do you handle hydrogen? How do you transport it? Or do you create it on the spot? And experiments such as this one, where we actually get to, in everyday practice, get to work with hydrogen as a fuel, it just advances the state of our knowledge.
Several global companies are developing hydrogen fuel cell products that in the future will not only power vehicles but also office buildings and homes. They say that partnerships like the one in California will bring that future to the present much sooner. We go to northern England now for the four-wheeled equivalent of supermoto, rallycross. 6 times British rallycross champion Dermot Carnegie of Ireland started on pole position in his Ford Focus, fastest in the opening 2 heats. Britain's Pat Doran and Will Gollop completed the front row, but it was Doran, runner-up last year, who hit the front on the first corner. Gollop and Carnegie came together going into turn 2, forcing the latter to cut the corner as the race got off to a highly competitive start. But Gollop dropped back himself after clipping a set of tyres in an attempt to pressure the leader. The pre-race favourite, though, was Frenchman Laurent Thériton, who had suffered 2 broken drive shafts in the earlier heats. The Frenchman had to battle through from the back of the grid, but his powerful Citroën Sara had the measure of the field, and the 3-time French rallycross champion and European champion-elect overtook Carnegie to take second and set his sights on Doran. Denmark's Tils Hansen limped home on 3 wheels after another incident in a bruising race. Up front, Thériton tried everything to find an opening and get past Doran, but the Briton held firm, taking the checkered flag at the end of 6 laps by just 0.6 of a second. Doran scored his 2nd British rallycross title after a 13-year gap. The last time he won was back in 1991 at Brands Hatch, and the 43-year-old celebrated in style.
That's fantastic. I've won the Grand Prix before, but that was a fair few years ago. Great to do it again, and unexpected. Great to get to the front row, just playing for the day, get in there, doing the best we can, and then had a great start. But when I saw that Frenchman coming behind me, I knew how quick that car was, and I had to step it up a bit.
Thériton came home a clear second ahead of the Irishman Carnegie and Helmut Holfeldt, but the day belonged to Doran, who swaps his Ford Escort for a Fiesta next year. British explorers set off at the end of this month using skis, kites and Land Rovers in an attempt to break the record for crossing Antarctica. If they succeed, they'll be fulfilling the dream of Sir Ernest Shackleton, who 90 years ago tried to organise teams to converge on the South Pole from different directions. The young team revealed their plans for their record attempt, surrounded by the old and new equipment expeditions have used. Shackleton's vehicle broke down after only 90 metres on the ice. Modern Land Rovers should do better. For the 4 skiers, the first part of their journey takes them up across the Axel Heiberg Glacier. 2 Land Rovers will approach from the west, and then it's back again using the kites at high speed.
No one's been up there for nearly 90 years, or over 90 years. Also, the 4x4s, no one's ever driven a 4x4 to the South Pole, so we don't know where they're going to make it. And then kiting back as well. These kites are huge and they're incredibly powerful, so we could be going breakneck speeds.
For us, while we're going to the South Pole, we'll have winds in our face all the time. And when I say all the time, it's all the time. It doesn't let up. It's day after day after day. And that tends to wear on you.
The old explorers could only have dreamt of doing it this way. Communications via mobile phone and satellite links will be looked after by the team leader's girlfriend, but she has a concern.
The cold conditions with the communication networks, they are all going to be sitting inside the Land Rovers, but obviously it is a factor because these have never been used before in these kind of conditions. And I guess being out in the middle of nowhere for 2 months.
The teams hope to complete the 2,000-kilometre journey early in January. Rather them than me. So whether you're driving 900 horses, smoking some tyres, or just knocking them over, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.